Hello, and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series and Podcast. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We are pleased to have Naser Khader, who has served as a member of the Danish Parliament since 2001 and a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, join us to discuss Denmark, where the left cracks down on Islamism. Mr. Khader will speak for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Mr. Naser Khader.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for inviting me. I have a huge respect for Daniel Pipes. Daniel visited me in the Danish Parliament many years ago, and I followed the Middle East Forum. We are on the same page. So when it comes to immigration, throughout the last 2 decades, Denmark has adopted a new realistic approach to these issues. In the late 60s, when my father and others arrived to Denmark to work, they didn't expect anyone to support them. They were not a burden to the state. They contributed to Denmark's wealth. In the 80s and 90s, things started to change. The approach was that the people who arrived were victims, so nothing was demanded of them. They were supplied with all their needs and got used to living on support and found no reason to work or to give back to society. They even became a loose to society. Things changed in the early 20s. Now we draw a line between immigration policy, which is about economy, and asylum policies, which is about providing protection and asylum when it needed. However, this protection is regarded now as temporary, not permanent. This new realistic approach is now widely accepted in Denmark, from left to right and red to green, and also of the majority of the Danes. We, Denmark, are a front-runner country, and I'm proud of it. This is what I asked for in my books and in many of my articles since I was a student in the late 80s. And was a translator for many refugees from Middle Eastern countries. Many of them came, they got the same privilege as the Danish from day one. But they were never, I never heard any gratitude. I can't remember I translate the word thanks. That annoyed me a lot. I don't like when people come to a new country and misuse the new country. So today I will discuss how well the Danish policies are working, and why even the Social Democrat Party, they have the power now, the government now. It's a center-left party. They took a new and more realistic position up to the last election in 2019. They discovered that the main reason they lost a lot of elections was because their liberal immigration policies, So they adopted a more conservative ideology on immigration and on law and order. This change in policy was partly to win the next election, and partly because they realized that we have huge integration problems that need to be solved. I think this paradigm change is a potential model for the rest of Europe if we want to protect and save our open societies and welfare. It could also be a model for other left-wing parties in Western Europe. Let's look at the Labour Party in UK. They have a very weak leader. He can't cut through. and be a strong leader and modernized his party the way Tony Blair did in the 90s. If he wants to be prime minister, he has to face up to the group that recent years had hijacked the party: left-wingers, anti-Semitic, Black Lives Matters, identity policy groups, woke agenda, and so on. Most of them are in one or another way in alliances with Islamists. As my friend here, C. Ellis, said, the left wings are the best gift to Islamists. The same thing could be said about the Democrats in the United States of America. So back to the subject in hand, the choice of religion and culture has always been free and up to the individual. It was assumed that people would and could live their lives peacefully and in accordance with Danish Western values. However, the Mohammed cartoon crisis in 2005 became a kind of turning point, an eye-opener for many Danish. The Danish rights of personal expression and the freedom of the press came under heavy attack. I think that until this, most people in Denmark had not really considered the differences in religion and culture of immigrant groups in general. The approach before that was optimistic. Time will take of integration, but we were wrong. Now we can see that even young Muslims born in Western Europe are against integration and are more loyal to their parents' countries than to the country they live in. Integration is not something pick and choose to do. The state must step in and make rules which everybody should follow. Danish are astounded at the idea that freedom of expression should be suppressed and that a wave of violence and death threats could spread throughout the Muslim world so easily, all because a handful of cartoons. So this incident proved to be a turning point or a trigger point, which meant that we in Denmark became a frontrunner country when it came to combating political Islam and those who don't want to be integrated in Denmark. Maybe all Western countries need their own cartoon crisis to realize it. Look at France. They had, in a way, their cartoon crisis, Charlie Hebdo, which was far more dramatic and caused Macron to change from being a soft liberal to being more of a hawk. I was once asked by a group of Syrian refugee women in Denmark. They came to visit me in the parliament. One of them asked why it is that you decision makers hate us, refugees. I told her, nobody hate you. Why do you say that? She said, because you don't give us so much money and benefits. I told her that has nothing to do with hate. We as a decision makers in Denmark has to look at our citizens first. The Danes are actually colorblind and are very welcoming people if people want Denmark, contribute to Denmark, love Denmark. But because Denmark is also a very small and homogeneous country, and they know the country's existence depends on everyone abiding the law and embracing Danish values and traditions. Everybody is expected to make a contribution, including through work and taxes for the common good. That's a very Lutheranian value, and Denmark is a Lutheranian country. You have to work. A lot of them, a lot of the refugees and immigrants don't do this today. The majority of women from many immigrant groups are on social welfare. The large majority of them, of certain groups. This annoy a lot of hardworking Danes. The Social Democrat Party had for many years been divided on this issue. However, the current leadership understood that there is a fundamental contradiction between a very liberal immigration policy and the survival of the welfare state. As you know, Denmark is a welfare state, and that doesn't come free. It's a question of numbers. Immigration from third world countries costs the Danish taxpayers more than 4 billion US dollars or 3.5 billion pounds a year. This, of course, means a loss of public money, which cannot at the same time be spent on the welfare state's core activities. Denmark will always provide a safe haven for those who need it. I also don't see us leaving any international agreements or conventions, but we will challenge some of the conventions, especially the one that prevent us from deport criminals from Denmark. That's annoyed me and a lot of Danish citizens. It's not going to happen for a small country like Denmark to leave international agreements, but we will be tough on immigration no matter who is in government from now on. It's not going to change. The change we have seen the last years, I believe, is real. The Social Democrats really mean it. They see the period between 1980 and 2020 as an exemption to the rule that the Social Democrat Party should be the guarantee for the survival of the welfare state. They realize it, and that's good. Obviously, the Social Democrat leadership also observed how traditional working class voters have gradually left social democratic parties for more anti-immigration parties in Denmark. But I do believe they have finally realized that the welfare state cannot survive a liberal, open, free for all immigration policy. Like all conservative parties, the Social Democrats today see Sweden as the worst case scenario. Sweden is, in my opinion, the champion of political correctness and naivety. For years, our neighbor, Sweden, has accepted everyone from all corners of the world, both as migrants and as refugees. Some were even given residence permits from day one on their arrival. It's easy to get a Swedish citizenship and so on, unlike Denmark. This was done with the best of intentions and in the name of humanity. However, lack of any real integration has taken a heavy toll. There is a huge concentration of immigrants in many of the housing projects surrounding the larger towns and capital, Stockholm. Gangs dominate these areas, and the level of violence is very high, with gun violence way above the EU norms, where the EU statistics show that annually 1.6 people per million die as a result of gunshot. Within the EU as a whole, the figure for Sweden is 4 per million. In Germany, for example, 2.9 per million people are murdered each year. In Sweden is 12 per million. A large number of these are traceable to unintegrated immigrant gangs. The hip-hop scene is dominated by gangs. In the past, young people used to use hip-hop to get out of crime, and now they use hip-hop to get into crime and gangs. Sweden calls its welfare state for folkehjemmet. Translated, that means the people's home. In my opinion, that home is broken. Sweden is lost. We in Denmark wish to avoid such frightening statistics. The numbers speak for themselves. Up until 2015, the number of immigrants arriving in Denmark grew. Since 2015, the number of immigrants has decreased. But the most important, we demand that all immigrants to assimilate in Denmark. Integration is not enough. Assimilation is not to reset your background, but to impress Denmark and the Danish culture. So we welcome all those who wish to be part of the Danish society, who wish to work, to integrate, to pay taxes, and in all seek integration. The choice of religion is still free, but private. Preaching hate is not private. Nobody accepts immigrants to stop being who they are, but they must accept that when living and working in Denmark, they live by Danish rules and Danish laws. So I would not say that the Danish attitude has hardened as such, but that we have become more realistic and more aware of what it needed to remain Denmark as we know Denmark, a free, open, cohesive society. The conservative parties in Denmark wisely foresaw this situation back in 2006 after the Mohammed cartoon crisis, and the Social Democrats saw it lately, but good they did, and they are now dedicated to preserving the welfare state. So if the EU doesn't adopt more realistic policies towards immigration, I fear that more member states will follow the UK and take control over their borders in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You made some very fascinating points. First question is from Carrie. What, in general, is the background of the immigrants who prefer to immigrate to Denmark?
Sorry?
What is the background of the immigrants who prefer to immigrate to Denmark?
You know, in the late 60s, beginning of the 70s, a lot of people from Turkey, ex-Yugoslavia, some from the Middle East, among them my father. In the 80s and 90s, we got a lot of refugees from Lebanon, Palestinian from Lebanon, Iraq, ex-Yugoslavia, Somalia. Later on, we got refugees from Afghanistan, and the last 5-6 years from Syria and Afghanistan. And also Pakistanis, they came in the 70s.
All right, thank you. Just for some background knowledge there. So we have a question from an anonymous viewer. Is the problem of social adjustment of Muslim immigrants based on the fact that they are coming mostly for economic reasons rather than in search for political values such as democracy and personal freedoms?
I couldn't hear, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Maybe the mic closer.
Okay.
Is the problem of social adjustment of Muslim immigrants based on the fact that they're coming from to Europe for economic reasons rather than in search of political values such as democracy and personal freedoms?
Yeah, that's what wonder, if you leave your country because the lack of freedom of speech and so on, I can't understand why you don't adapt it, these values, when you come to the new country. I travel a lot, and the most extreme people I've ever met are living in the West, in Denmark and Western Europe. I like Muslims in the Muslims world more than Muslims in the West Europe.
Understood. Thank you. From Ira Strauss, could the Danish Social Democrats use their influence to help the Social Democrats in the US uh, think and act right on this issue?
I think a lot of, I'm not social democrat, but I admire the paradigm change they did the last years. It's good for the country, even though we don't agree politically on all issues. If you care for Denmark, then it's good what they done the last 5, 6 years. And I think a lot of other European social democrats are observing what the Danish Social Democrats are doing. Some of them has said they don't want to do the same in Denmark, as the Social Democrat in Sweden. They are very familiar with what the Social Democrat has done in Denmark, but they don't want to go the same way. And in my opinion, it's wrong. So, in my opinion, the Danish Social Democrat are frontrunner of the modern social democrat of the West. So other social democrat parties should learn from the Danish social democrats.
Thank you. From Ken Miller, in the European countries, do you think that the loss of historical culture in the countries is too far progressed to reverse itself and the cultural issues cannot be restored? And is this not what will happen in the US going forward?
I think that a lot of Westerner, they don't, it seems like they don't care about their values. They should care about the values. The Western values are, in my opinion, the best values when it comes to personal freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and so on. So they should care for these values, also protect these values, and tell people who come to the Western countries, you have to adopt these values. They are first, and your home country's values, keep it at home. So I really can't understand why most of the Westerner has a laissez-faire view on their Western values.
Thank you. And along those lines, Ayad Rahim asks, what has Denmark done to encourage integration and assimilation and that feeling of pride of being Danish?
A lot. We are proud of what we had done. We use a lot of money every year to integration. When you come to Denmark as a refugee, you get free education, you get a free flat or house, free health. Everything is free. And the first 3 years, we give you a chance to learn the language. But afterwards, you should go out and look for a job. And that's what most of the refugees don't do, because sometimes there's no difference between being on welfare and to get a job to a minimum wage. And that's wrong, in my opinion, because to work is the best social policies, in my opinion.
Thank you. And you were mentioning Sweden earlier, with the border being so close, not border. Is Denmark able to control the border with Sweden from Islamists?
Right now we do, because of COVID. So that's one of the few good things of the COVID, that we can control our border more than we did before. But I don't think that we, after the COVID, will go back to not controlling the border. There's a huge demand among the citizens that we should control our border. Also because every time the Danish hear about Sweden, it's about violence and about criminality. In Sweden, they have what they call tribe gangs. Not ordinary gangs, but gangs related to families. The leader of the Swedish police said they have around 40 tribe gangs, and some of them try to extend their gangs to the neighboring countries. So we have had a couple of incidents in Denmark where the Swedish gangs are fighting each other in Denmark and trying to get alliance in Denmark. And we don't want it. That's why there's a demand that we should control our border to Sweden also.
Thank you. My apologies. That question was from Steve Holstein.
Okay.
From Stephen Gerzoff. Do you have any outspoken Islamists in Denmark, such as the ones in Great Britain, who lecture about welfare for Muslim immigrants, that welfare is owed to them, and the annual payments which non-Muslims must pay as demas to ruling Muslim class? I tried to paragraph.
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Do you have any outspoken Islamists in Denmark that are going against these immigration policies?
Well, we still have opposition against this policy that is supported among the majority of the parties and the majority of the Danish people. We still have liberal parties and very left-wing parties that are against this policy. But they are small, they don't have a large influence, and they will not change anything because there's a consensus. We will not change this policy. And we don't want to be a country people come to because of the benefits. If you want to come to Denmark, only if we need your skills. If some companies, Danish companies, need some labor skills, then we will open up for it. In my opinion, and other conservative politicians, we should reject people coming to our border and seek asylum. The refugees should be picked up from the refugee camps in Middle East and other countries, because those who come to Denmark or the Western country, they use a lot of money to do it, and the smuggler get rich of it. You can see what's happening in Belarus. A lot of them who came, they came as tourists to Belarus and used a lot of money to get there. But people, refugees in the refugee camp who doesn't have 10, 15,000 US dollars to come to Europe, they don't have a chance. So in my opinion, nobody should get asylum. If they come themselves, we should pick them up from the refugee camp as Khader refugees.
Thank you. In our last few minutes here, what can be done to encourage greater cultural assimilation of Muslims in Europe?
Right now, I'm very pessimistic because our opponents, those who don't like the Western values, who doesn't like democracy, freedom, and so on, they are better than we are to get the young people to be a part of their movements. We should be much better and tell the young people who are living here in the West that our values is much better than our opponents. But the problem is people are scared of telling other people about their culture and their values because They are afraid that they will say that they are racist or people who don't like foreigners. But in my opinion, we should flash our Western values much more than we do now.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've reached the end. Can you tell our viewers where we can find some more of your work?
Yes, you can find some of my articles on hudson.org. You can find some of my CV and so on the Danish Parliament's website. It's called christiansborg.dk, and I have a homepage called Khader.dk and Facebook, Naser Khader Denmark. You can send me a message to my messenger there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have quite a few wonderful questions that unfortunately we didn't get time to get to, but thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Of course. For our viewers, please join us Wednesday for an update with Ashley Perry at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.